right, welcome back to E3 All Access Live. If you've noticed things getting a little creepy around here, it's because we're about to see the evil within for the first time. Helping us do that is Pete Hines from Bethesda. Pete, it's always good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
Another E3 and a big reveal for you guys. This was a surprise announcement. Shinji Mikami, his new game, of course, the creator of Resident Evil. Tell us what this project is all about for you.
Ultimately, it's about giving Shinji and his team at Tango a chance to do something they really wanted to do, which is to do a survival horror game, but to do what Shinji considers to be a pure survival horror game, going back to kind of where it all started for him in creating the Resident Evil series, something that's maybe not so heavy on the action or the combat, but finds a nice balance for that along with other elements, just pure survival.
Yeah, balance is a key word there because, you know, the survival horror genre was huge for a while and then started veering more towards action. But there's going to be some action elements in this game, correct? Or is it mostly focused on...
Absolutely, okay. But we want you to always be off balance, so you're not sure, like, do I have enough bullets to deal with the enemies that I'm facing? I got 3 bullets and 8 bad guys. How am I going to get out of this situation? So we want you to always be scared. We want you to be off balance. We want to blend, character and story with action and puzzle solving. Traps are a big theme in the game. So taking all those things and blending them together, as opposed to here's a weapon and a bunch of bullets and just go mow your way through some kind of undead thing. That's just not the kind of game they wanted to make.
Yeah, obviously integral to the success of something like this is the atmosphere. Talk a little bit about, what is going into the story, the setting, and why players are going to want to be invested in this game world.
Sure. So it starts, you play as Sebastian, who's a police detective, and you get called to an asylum, and once you get there, terrible things have happened. And really, we're not going to say a whole lot more about the story than that, because the story is in some ways the puzzle that you're unraveling with Sebastian as you play through the game. What exactly is going on? What is reality? What isn't reality? What's causing the shift between these places? But that's a big part of it is setting that tone and that environment, doing a lot of things with lighting and sound. The whole game is presented in a 2.351 CinemaScope aspect ratio, so it's a little different than 16:9. It's a little wider and thinner, and it has an effect, even things like not being able to see the ground while you're walking. Just makes it a lot more atmospheric. We're
seeing Sebastian in action right here now, Pete, and obviously there's a lot of work that's going into making sure that the player feels immersed into this game world. As far as the encounters, I mean, you're talking about that survival. Making sure that the pacing is right and the gameplay is right. But where does this veer on the difficulty scale? Is this going to be something super challenging?
To be determined.
Okay.
We're still in dev.
Right.
But I can tell you, Shinji has every intention of making the game difficult.
Yeah.
It's not a game they set out initially to say we're going to make a really hard game, but we want you to be scared. We want it to feel like a challenge and for it to feel difficult. So it's not a game you're just going to waltz right through without dying. Part of that is going to come from the fact that the AI is dynamic. So there's situations you're going to get in where the enemies move in a certain way, you die, you say, oh well, I just need to do it this time because this is what they did, and you come through again and they've done something completely different this time. So it's not just everybody's on the same path all the time. You are going to have to think your way through and sort of adapt to situations on the fly.
Well, obviously Resident Evil inspired so many games that came after it, but since those early games, we've seen titles like Dark Souls and Demon Souls, and there's a lot of people out there who love a good challenge, but it seems like this is looking to offer up a blend of something that's accessible, but also, definitely going to test your metal.
Absolutely. If you're looking for a game that challenges you and scares the crap out of you, this is definitely the game you've been looking for.
And this is a purely single-player experience, or is there an online component?
Purely single player. There are other characters, but it's not about you or you and a companion trying to get through things. It's really all about you trying to survive, interacting with characters as you go through, but it's a straight single-player game.
And quickly, I want to find out about, you mentioned the enemies briefly, but, knowing those classic Resident Evil enemies and also some of the things we've seen in recent years from other series, can we expect some crazy enemies to be combating?
Absolutely. You've seen some of the B-roll that we're showing. We've got the chainsaw guy who's chasing you around. Some different horrors coming out. You've got some of your standard humanoid type guys that look identifiable, and I think I've seen that before. But then, the stuff that he comes up with, I like to joke, every time we have a a playbook meeting with those guys where they show like what they've
Yeah.
been working on and put up that art. It's horrifying.
It looks amazing. We're really, really looking forward to checking out this game. Thanks so much for the information on it. Of course, Pete, it's always good to see you. The E3 All Access stage, Pete, is still here through the commercial break, and we have some questions from our audience about the game.
Fire away.
Will wants to know, new survival horror from Bethesda. You've got my attention, but how long will the Evil Within be in terms of game? That's actually a question from Tango Fan. So in terms of length, do you have a target length or what?
Again, we're still in development, so like in the stage we're at, we're still building the levels and going through, but obviously as big believers in single player experiences, we believe that when you go down that path that you have to provide something robust enough. So it's got to be something that, you know, there's no 8-hour single player experience that we were really trying to create. Whether it's 12 hours or 14 hours or 18 hours, it's still too early to tell, but certainly something that feels pretty meaty and weighty, and it's going to take you a while to get through.
Okay. Well, Ellen Witten said that very, very excited about the Evil Within. And finally, a survival horror game without a focus on action, something we spoke about in the interview.
Yep.
But it's intentional, right? You want to make sure that there is action elements, but the 100% focus of this game is to bring back survival horror to its classic days.
Yeah, and so that you know what that means is that it's a scarcity of resources thing, where you know that you're trying to do some exploration and find things that you can use, maybe traps that you can use yourself, or you know just some additional ammo. We've even got this mechanic where you can wound an enemy and take them down, shoot them in the leg so that they're on the ground. Instead of finishing them off and using up one of your precious bullets, you can use matches to run up and light them. Of course, the only problem is that sometimes they're faking. And they're laying there, you know, sort of playing dead so that you'll run up and try and light them on fire, and then they jump up at you. So it's sort of never letting the player really feel comfortable about what to do, or, you know, you've got some enemies and it kind of feels like a combat situation, but then you realize you're better served if you just run or hide or try and get around them. So it's that whole you know, idea of mixing it up constantly, so you're never entirely sure, oh, this is the combat part, oh, this is the exploration part, that it's always sort of blended.
Bethesda's been doing a lot of things outside of the box. Last year, one of my favorite games was Dishonored. What does this game mean for you guys in terms of having a great effort to work with Shinji Mikami in the studio?
You know, I think games like Dishonored that you mentioned, and taking vets like Roth and Harvey and saying, you know, you guys are known for immersive first-person games with really fully realized world. Go make something you really want to make. Somebody like Shinji and saying, you're the father of survival horror, like you practically invented it. What do you want to do? And when he says, I want to do a pure survival horror, like, okay, let's do that. And then, you know, the guys that you're going to have on here in a minute, Jens and his team from Machine Games, like, what are you guys really passionate about in this idea of them taking something like Wolfenstein and rebooting it? All of those things have a very similar feel. It's really talented teams and leads creating the game they've always wanted to make. That, you know, that's fun for us.
Okay, well, we appreciate it so much, Pete. We're going to come back to E3 All Access Live, so stick around. More coverage to come in just a minute.